Bonjour Virginia Tilley et merci d'avoir accepté notre invitation à venir en France. Donc vous êtes à l'origine avec Richard Falk du rapport présenté aux Nations Unies sur l'apartheid. Alors la première question c'est est-ce qu'il y a eu des demandes, des questions adressées à vous pour que vous puissiez modifier la teneur du rapport avant qu'il soit décidé de ne pas le publier? Et est-ce qu'il y a d'autres exemples de telles interférences et de décisions équivalentes?
Well, you're speaking about the scandal that erupted when we released the report, I think, when the Secretary General pulled the report from the United Nations website. He made a claim at that time that the report had not been properly submitted, that it had not gone through the review necessary for the United Nations to post such a report. That was not the case. The report was submitted to the proper authorities. They had months to review it, and they simply didn't do it. Either that or they thought it was all right. I think that was rather a cover story. We were never asked to modify anything in the report, either before or after it was issued. In fact, we've never had any criticism of the report from the United Nations. So there are the only problems that have been presented by the United Nations about the report was procedural, not anything to do with the content.
Quelles possibilités existent pour soumettre à nouveau le rapport ou ses conclusions devant les instances de l'ONU?
I think there are people working on this. I believe that Rima Khalaf, who was the chair of the commission that commissioned the report, the Commission for the Economic and Social Council of West Asia, she has been inquiring about this. Other people have been inquiring. I think the report will come before different forums of the General Assembly, and we look forward to its being pursued in those forums with an eye toward, I hope, to see the reconvening of the Special Committee on Apartheid to review and examine the report's findings.
Alors, quelle réponse apportez-vous à l'affirmation selon laquelle l'apartheid n'est pas la question fondamentale?
I think apartheid is the fundamental question. I think when we look at the conflict through that lens, we find that everything fits this lens. Israel's primary imperative, its primary goal, is to maintain the state of Israel as the state of the Jewish people. This aim, this goal, has been expressed as a system of laws and institutions which systematically oppress the Palestinian people of the territory, the non-Jewish Palestinian people. And it drives everything. It drives the occupation. Israel has to maintain the occupation in order to prevent demands by the people who live there for equal rights and citizenship and the vote. It drives Israel's policies toward its own citizens, Palestinian citizens of Israel who suffer under a system of discrimination. It prevents the return of the refugees, which is a central demand of the Palestinian side of the conflict. If we don't understand the origins of these policies, it becomes much harder to understand Israel's motives. Why is Israel doing the settlements? Why is Israel taking its position in the peace talks? All of it relates to this fundamental aim, which is to divide the land between the two peoples and ensure that one dominates the other. Mm-hmm. That's apartheid.
Et quelle réponse au fait que son abolition donc, de l'apartheid en Afrique du Sud n'a pas fait disparaître, mais en partie a réparti différemment les profondes inégalités sociales?
In South Africa?
Yeah,
in South Africa. Well, I think people need to understand South Africa better than they do. In any transition like this, we would not expect to see instant racial accord and equality. The stories about how badly South Africa is doing today, I don't want to say that these stories are entirely untrue, that would not be fair or accurate, but they're greatly exaggerated. Anyone who's visited the country finds it's completely transformed. It's grown enormously, and all of that growth is in the Black African sector. The whole demography and economy of the country has been profoundly altered. The legacy of apartheid lives on. It will probably live on for some decades as the old grievances are one by one tackled as it becomes politically possible to do so. But using South Africa as an example of what not to do in Israel, I think, is to take the reverse lesson. I think it's been an extraordinary success in South Africa, given what they were up against.
Mm-hmm. Alors, puisque le rapport montre que la campagne BDS est une solution légitime pour lutter contre l'apartheid, comment la campagne BDS au niveau mondial peut-elle être un moyen d'infléchir les comportements de ces États à l'ONU et donc potentiellement faire pression sur les puissances complices d'Israël?
Well, a finding that Israel is practicing apartheid, according to the definition provided by international law, automatically invokes the obligations that states have under international law to stop it. All states that have signed the Convention Against Apartheid would be obligated to do that. Moreover, since apartheid has been found to be a crime against humanity, it's arguably a law that everyone has to abide by, even where they haven't signed the law. So if this report advances to the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice, and there's a formal legal finding, which our report is not. Our report was a report by the authors to the Commission. But it should become confirmed by one of these high authorities. It would impose on the entire international community an obligation to act. Obviously, there are difficulties with any such measure in the international community because some aspects of international law, particularly international human rights law, are difficult to enforce. This is a process we've been going through for decades as human rights slowly become more important to international affairs. Sometimes they are violated with impunity, and sometimes they become serious measures to accomplish something. I think the only test of international law is the political will to make it, to push it through, and to make it come about, and that is often the collective political will of the people. And that's where global networks such as the BDS campaign become quite important in creating an environment in which some questions can be raised, in which some motions can be made, and in which governments feel freer to act according to their legal obligations.
Comment voyez-vous l'avenir du droit international compte tenu de la paralysie de l'ONU face au droit de veto des membres du Conseil de sécurité et face au comportement des grandes puissances complices ou inefficaces face à de nombreux crimes de guerre?
Yeah. Well, I think people are naturally absorbed by the United Nations as the instrument for these measures, which instantly brings attention to the United States as a veto power on the Security Council. On the other hand, it's, I think, an error to look to that forum first. We have to remember that in the fight against apartheid in South Africa, the United States was the last country, not the first country, the last country to oppose apartheid. And I think we're going to see something similar in this case, which means, but the United Nations is not just the Security Council. The United Nations is also the General Assembly, and it was the General Assembly that put together this special committee on apartheid. And the special committee became the forum for states and non-state actors to assemble data, to compare notes, to do analyses, to hold events, and to sort out a solution to the problem in South Africa. I think in that sense the United Nations is a much wider body than just the Security Council, and a great deal can be done there. The more, again, the better the climate for that kind of effort, the more likely we are to see it. So the BDS campaign fits into that in the sense of enabling and opening doors and ways for the creation, the reconvening of the special committee. That's what I'm thinking about. Those people who are working in the United Nations have a much closer sense of what's possible in the United Nations, but I do see it as a viable forum and possibly an essential forum for this.
Merci beaucoup Virginia Tilley d'avoir répondu à nos questions.
Okay.